All right, thanks everybody for coming today. We made it to the end of South by, which is exciting. I'm going to introduce our Rockstar panelists, and we'll go through a bunch of question and answer. And at the end, we have a mic at the back, so if you guys have questions about any of them, we can do that as well. So just to start, my name is Drew Giovanoli, CEO of Red Fox Insights, and we create authentic research for brands and game publishers to help them understand how to best build and market their game. And we'll have each of our panelists kind of, if you could provide details, obviously introduce yourself, and then some details about the game you're working on most recently right now.
Yeah, sure. My name is J. Todd Coleman. I am a creative director and executive producer of MMOs. That's, in fact, all I've ever worked on in the games industry is MMOs. My first one was a game back in the 2003 timeframe called Shadowbane. After that, I skipped over and decided to work on family-friendly games. And I was the creative director on a game called Wizard 101 and the follow-up Pirate 101. And then after doing that for about 8 years, I decided I didn't want to do family-friendly games for a while. I wanted to shift gears again, so I kind of went back to my roots and teamed up with Gordon Walton to create a new game called Crowfall, which we did a crowdfunding for just over a year ago, and raised almost $2 million. So I think we're at about 2.6 now in crowdfunding to get that title off the ground.
Great. Olga?
Hey y'all, my name is Olga Garcia. Previously I worked at Niantic Labs, which was a division at the time of Google. We worked on games like Field Trip and Ingress. Both are location-based MMOs, augmented reality games. Now I actually work in our education department, but yeah, just really excited to be here with everyone and excited that you guys are here after a long week of South by.
Hi, I'm Corey Butler, a senior producer at BioWare Austin. I've been in games for about a little over a decade now. All of it here in Austin. Started out making some smaller games, worked on some Sims titles as a writer-designer, and then most recently I've been working on a Star Wars: The Old Republic, and well, most recently for it's the second longest relationship in my life right now. I've been on that game. So.
And recently got a promotion.
And as of last week, director of business development for BioWare.
Awesome. Yeah, so what's pretty cool about this panel is we have a diverse group of backgrounds. So we have somebody who is part of one of the larger franchises, Star Wars property. We have an independent game that raised close to $2 million on Kickstarter, which is unbelievable, and one of Google's games. So it's a location-based, event-based game. So we'll have different perspectives, and this is going to touch on both how game developers and game publishers can interact with their community, but also how kind of you as a gamer are impacting the way games are made today because of the technologies that are built. And so to my left, I guess we can start with you. You've made MMO games for a long time.
Yes.
But this one is very different in the fact that it is crowdfunding. Can you just start at a high level and talk about the impact that crowdfunding has had on the actual development process, like the way you think about the game?
Well, yeah, I mean, crowdfunding basically flips the entire development process completely on its head, right? I mean, traditionally, you and your team, you would basically come up with a core idea that you thought would resonate with some particular audience, and then you'd go pitch it to people with money and say, hey, if you give me money to make this thing, it'll bring back more money. And that's usually, unless you have like a rich uncle or something, the only reason people give you money is because you can make them more money. So for a long time, in the beginning of MMOs specifically, there was a whole lot of innovation. There was a lot of people taking a lot of different risks and trying things out because nobody knew what would work and what wouldn't. And then all of a sudden, World of Warcraft comes on the scene and starts making like multiple $1 billion a year. And now everybody knows exactly what works, and everybody wants that. So for a long period of time, kind of post World of Warcraft, it was all about the only way you could raise money was by pitching World of Warcraft with blank, sure. Right? World of Warcraft with tanks, or World of Warcraft with World of Warcraft with Jedi, or no offense, or World of Warcraft with.
It was pitched as World of Warcraft with lightsabers.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Got it. Or World of Warcraft with wizards in a wizard school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so we all kind of did this. That was the way that you went out and pitched, and there were some good games that came out of that. But what the downside of that is, it really pretty much stopped innovation. Like people stopped trying trying to do things other than reproduce the magic in the bottle that led to $2 billion a year in annual revenue. Like everybody wanted to do that. So crowdfunding totally changes that model. Suddenly you're not going to the stereotypical VC firm or publisher and saying, hey, I need to convince you. Instead, you're going directly to people who will be your customers and saying, this is the game that we want to make. And if you like that, pay for it a little bit, help us make it. And if you don't like it, then the idea dies. So it's almost like a genetic algorithm, right, where people are trying all of these ideas, and the ones that really have merit and look like they have come from a team that can really get it done and look reasonable and stuff like that, those kind of just bubble up to the top. So instead of pitch the idea, get the money, build the game, sell it, it's sell it, get the money, build the game, sell it forever. I mean, it's just a whole different model. So for us, community development, really community management and relating to our community, that was from the very, very beginning an absolutely vital step.
Yeah, great. And we'll get into that more. Do you think that the gamers who are supporting Kickstarter-backed games, especially MMOs, are they different than the core MMO audience?
There's a higher level of passion, right? Sure. We talk about that quite a bit because you're always trying to figure out what your actual potential audience is, and so we have 26,000 backers now, and so we're like, well, so is that 50% of our market? Is that 10% of our market? Is that 1% of our market?
Sure.
So I don't know. I guess we'll find out eventually.
Totally.
And that landscape is changing, right? There was a big flood at the beginning of people in 2012 and 13 who were doing crowdfunding, and then 2014 was dead. In fact, it was so dead everybody was saying, well, the honeymoon's over, don't do it. But we were already committed at that point, so we're like, all right, beginning of 2015, let's try it, and it worked, thankfully. And then we've had a string of even bigger ones than ours that have hit since. So nobody knows. I mean, that's the thing about being on the cutting edge is you don't know what to expect because we're all guessing.
Yeah, that's great. And so I think it's a good transition to Olga. The Kickstarter the technology obviously influenced the way games are made and the way gamers think about games. The fact that your game, Ingress, if you could talk a little bit more, just describe it, but it is only a game that is possible because of mobile tech, because of location tech, and online crowds. Tell people about the game and kind of how it's impacted by the technology.
Yeah, so what's really unique to me about Ingress is that you can actually play it wherever you are and interact with your physical space. So what's been really compelling, I used to actually run all of our events and our tournaments, was that we could bring together thousands of people in cities around the world and actually play together. So rather than being at home playing on our consoles and just kind of in our own little areas, we could interact with each other. And Ingress has continued to build this kind of community and scale the game through tournaments and through activities that bring people together outside of the online piece. And the way that I've seen the game grow since it started back in 2012 is incredible. I mean, we started, in terms of events in particular, in our tournaments, it started with like 50 people in a little backyard area. And now it's grown to like 6,000 people coming together in Tokyo or Berlin or, all these other countries. And it's just...
And why do you think that is? Is it because of the game's great? Is it because of the technology? What allowed for that growth?
I mean, I think there's a variety of reasons. One, the game is incredible. I mean, imagine being able to learn as you play a game with the physical environment that you're interacting with. I love that. The second piece of it as well is the community is so strong. These people care not just about Ingress, they care about each other. Yeah. And so the way that the game has scaled and the reason that it's scaled is because, the company Niantic Labs cares about their users, and the users actually care about getting other people involved because, a game is as fun as the individuals that you get to play with. And if you can continue to bring your friends together and interact with the physical space that you have around you, then it's a much more enjoyable interaction period.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the themes we have across the panel is that communities are so big among all of the games or such. And let's go into you, Corey. We've talked about how technology has impacted the game. I think for you guys, it's analytics are a huge piece of it, right? In game, like understanding what the gamers are talking about. But just to go off that last conversation, let's start with community. Can you talk about how community engages with each other and with your company?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of ways we reach out and touch community. There's obviously our community team that's in constant contact with those guys. There's the Reddit threads, there's social media in which, our community team, marketing, the developers themselves keep in touch with everybody. When I was running the cartel market, which was the microtransaction system behind. So for the last few years, I've been running all of the monetization for SWTOR. So with part of that, we had a pretty loyal spending group. So I actually set up a private Facebook group where I could have interactions with those people on a daily basis and kind of understand, the things that they were interested in, the things that were working, the things that weren't working, and really just giving them an opportunity to have an outlet to reach out and talk to us about something that could be bothering them. But for me, of course there's the Bartles types of gaming types, but for me I kind of narrowed it into, or broadened it into two much larger groups, right? I look at our gamers as tourists or homesteaders. And tourists are the people that show up at launch, they play for a little bit, then they go away. They'll come back for new content, they'll consume that content, and then they'll go away again. And you have your homesteaders that are just with you through the long haul or with you for long periods of time, and they may cycle out, but then they'll come back and stay for long periods of time. And really digging into analytically, obviously qualitatively we know what those people are saying and doing, but analytically knowing what they're doing quantitatively is super important. Especially, the homesteaders obviously, but especially the tourists, because knowing what somebody does when they come and go quickly like that can help us build the game, change the game in a way that increases that life cycle for the player. So, obviously that's the key, is getting somebody into your game to have a good time and stay as long as you can possibly keep them there playing, and that drives up all your metrics.
Hey, can you give an example of what some of those metrics you're looking for? What's important to you?
Sure. I mean, we want to know when somebody churns out, when are they going to leave the game, and then we can try to figure out, we'll look around levels, right? And it's you got to level 10 and we had to make a pretty tough choice, and maybe we're not communicating clearly enough what this means when you're making that choice, and now you're married to this character, forever until you start a new one. So then we kind of go back and tweak those systems in a way that make them more player friendly, more intuitive, to try to get people over that initial hurdle, and then just keep looking at those hurdles, looking at places where we see spikes in churn or people just not logging back in, and then trying to smooth those edges off and fix those problems.
Sure. I think this question opened up kind of to everybody. I know that you get a lot of feedback, positive, negative, analytics, but also from the users. Can you talk about how you siphon out what feedback to listen to at all, and kind of how you move forward with that? So maybe start with you.
Yeah, so there has been a kind of industry-wide infatuation now with designing based on metrics, and I'm a little counter to that, so I may not be the best person to ask. It's not that I don't believe in metrics or don't want them. I do. I just don't think that they can replace having the gut level instinct that you get of dealing with communities and building these kind of systems over years and years and years. So to me, I'm happy to have the data, and I will absolutely look at the data, and then I will use the data to inform my gut. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go with my gut, and that's that over time, to me, that's proven to be a better recipe than just looking at the data. I mean, for example, you may have an issue where you notice you have a fall-off point, and you say, okay, well then let's just speed people through that quest and get them further down the quest chain.
Sure.
Sounds great. You do that. As a result, more people play longer, but in that intervening time, more of them fall off. So it's not always as simple as, what does the data tell me? Okay, then I'll make that change and everything is better. You have to take the data and say, okay, well, is it because they're getting bored at that point, or is that just the natural average break point of the first session?
Yeah.
So you have to make these kind of, I guess, more qualitative decisions based on the quantitative numbers that you're seeing, and sometimes you're not going to get it right. So it's a very iterative process.
Sure.
You might make that change, and then you don't know exactly what the impact is for 90 days, because you need to watch that pattern of how it affects your players over time, and then you can look back and go, well, it did get them further along, but it didn't really fix the problem, and it also now caused a bigger drop-off. So revert that one. Let's try something else.
Sure. Is that do the expectations though for a gamer who supports a game on Kickstarter that they're gonna be able to provide a lot of feedback? Is tough balance there? Or no?
No, actually, I prefer it, to be honest, because if in the normal old model like I talked about, you go off in a corner and you don't have any of that data, either qualitative or quantitative. You're just off building the game and hoping at the end they like it.
Sure.
What we're seeing now is we have people that are in, they play the play test, they come back, and they are not at all shy about telling us this is really good, this is really bad, right? So the good news out of that is we can look at that and we then play it ourselves and we say, okay, which of these that's really bad has merit, and okay, this one and this one and this one, they're totally right, we need to fix it. We stop everything, we fix it, and then we kind of move on, and they'll say, okay, well, you got this better, but this is still broken. What I'm hoping out of that is that we avoid the giant fall off at the end when you build up a lot of hype and then a bunch of people try it for the first time and they say, this isn't what I expected, and they quit. I'm hoping that by doing this iterative process on a month-by-month basis, that when that big moment comes, they know what they're getting, because it's what they played last week. So I'd like to believe that iterative process of working with the customers will make for a better game. I don't know that yet, because I haven't done this before. But
so what I'm hearing from you, though, is that it actually is super important that the gamers help identify the problem, where you see the separation is like, as a professional game developer and producer, I'll find the right solution and then we'll keep testing on it, but like maybe the most valuable part of the audience is identifying those issues.
Well, I think it's getting the temperature of them for when you make a fix or when you make a change, did it work? Because everything looks great on a whiteboard, but when you actually put it into practice, a number of your ideas just don't work. And sometimes the ones that you think are really risky turn out to be great, and the ones that you think were rock solid, they turn out to not work at all. So you just can't really know. So that feedback loop is very important. I guess the counterbalance to that is you have to own your vision. You can't outsource or crowdsource the vision of the game, because people on the internet can't agree on anything. Like, there's no way you're going to get agreement. So you need to figure out, here's where our ultimate destination is, and then you use that feedback as a way of kind of bumping you back and forth within the lane, like bumpers in a bowling alley, bumping you back and forth to try and help you hit that mark.
There you go.
I think J. Todd's spot on with what he said at the beginning there. I mean, I often say to our team, we make data-informed decisions, not data-driven decisions. So we look at the feedback from players, we look at the metrics, and then we base our decisions around that. And to get around to your original question, it's really, for us, we start with a question or a hypothesis, and then we call out the data or the qualitative or quantitative. And when I say data, I always mean both groups, right? It's not just numbers. I think people tend to think of data as numbers, but I'm always looking at it as the bigger picture. So then we'll call out the data that we need to answer those questions or prove or disprove that hypothesis. And it's certainly an advantage that we're going on our 5th year as a live service game, so we have tons of historical data, and then we can play with things in the real world and tweak things almost on a real-time basis and see what happens. So
I think what was unique about Ingress in particular, because obviously we are not quite as well established as y'all, is that it was a very iterative process from the beginning. So we had to sort out on the back end, how can we make sure that community has a seat at the table with product? And through that, we were able to make better decisions over time in order to give the community a seat at the table with our community managers, and making sure that our community managers had the ability to discern between the feedback that they were receiving and be able to take that back to product development. And so what's interesting is that over time, our community managers have actually become better at discerning. The community has done a better job as well at providing that level of feedback, and they do that through the online component, through the in-person component with our tournaments and whatnot. And it's just become a better system of collaboration with the individuals that care a lot about our game.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so for potential development teams here, does community management or social management sit under marketing for you guys, or under product?
Oh, yeah, I can give mine, but it's going to be a weird answer.
I was about to say, depends. Like, if you ask my marketing director that question, she's not going to answer it the way I'm about to answer it. For me, it's under product, right? Community is not a marketing tool. It's more of an opportunity for us to communicate with our players.
Sure.
So, but it certainly serves both purposes, because the best type of marketing is going to be word of mouth. And if you have a community that loves your game and they're going to go out and evangelize your game, then that's a huge win, right? But it's not necessarily something we push for. I mean, we do use Twitch streamers, influencers, to go out, and typically people that aren't huge MMO players, appealing to the audience that we may already have, but people that play other games, and we try to reach some of their audience members to come and check out our games. I would say that's an example of how we use it more as a marketing tool, but primarily in my mind, it's a product tool.
Let's hear your weird answer.
We don't have any marketing people. We have 2 community people. They roll directly up to production, and we don't have any marketing hires. I've seen it both ways, right?
Sure.
I've seen, but quite frankly, I'm of the opinion that even marketing needs to be tied directly into your development organization, because at the end of the day, your customers, they don't want to hear a bunch of marketing stuff. What they want to do is talk about the vision, talk about the design, and how you're going to get there. So I've never actually been at a company where I had some giant marketing organization, maybe located in another city, responsible for creating standees and putting us in conferences or something like that. The closest I've had to that was doing a deal with Ubisoft, and it was not, that particular part of the relationship was not something I would care to reproduce if I could help it. I felt too disconnected.
Sure.
And especially when you're in the business of online communities, you can't have people out talking to the community who aren't a part of that community.
Yeah,
right?
That's great. And so a piece of getting this data, let's talk about how you can functionally get it, if how you've seen it done at smaller teams, and so something that everybody does, play testing. Can you talk about how you guys think about play testing, if you do it, the people you try to bring in? Start with you.
Well, ours is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We run testing windows, and then based on people's pledge level, that determines how early in the queue they are.
Cool.
And we just invite them in waves. And basically, every time we have a new big version come out, we start over at the beginning of the list, and we invite in the first 25 people, and we see if the game breaks. And if it does break, we fix it. And if it doesn't break, we invite in the next 25, and then we go to 50, and then we go to 100, and then we just ramp it up from there. And every time it breaks, we stop and we fix it, and we do it again. And we do it in we'll do like 3 or 4 test windows in a given week, all across the world. So we'll be like, all right, in the EU, our next test is next Thursday. I think we have some today, actually. We have a server in Singapore. We have a server in Frankfurt. So we just kind of bring up these test windows and say, players come on in, and then we see if it breaks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Cool. Corey, you're probably closer to that than...
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's very focused testing. We have a public test server that's up when we pull it up for whatever feature we want it, to get hammered on. Usually anything involving PvP or balance is a great thing to stick on there, or even PvE operation type stuff or raids. Bigger things like expansions, especially now that we've shifted back to our basic roots of storytelling and have these very story-based expansions, we'll do closed beta testing around that stuff, with NDA things, so we don't get all those cinematics out on YouTube before we actually release the expansion. But I mean, yeah, it's very similar to a pre-launch scenario of how we test everything out.
And
it's just on a much faster cadence.
Yeah,
every
for gamers
few
in the
weeks.
audience, how could they get involved if they wanted to be part of that?
You just go on the website, and usually you can sign up for a public test server account. Most of them are just open, so you just opt in for that and then create a character there. And then for the closed stuff, it's either, depending on what we're doing, and again, because we've been around for a while and we have a pretty established player base, we'll do invite-only type testing where we know these people run large guilds and come in and knock out these operations quickly, or we'll just open it up for people to sign up, and then we'll notify you via email.
Yeah, and for Crowfall? If they can anybody choose to get involved early in the?
Well, you can pledge.
There you go.
But we also have a general sign up where people can go and just register an account.
Sure.
And when we get to beta, we'll dip into that group as well. So,
Olga, you were on the ground with folks, and so
I was trying to imagine how you guys do play testing. It seems really.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to what you were saying about the beta testing. It's all about the influencers. We have a very strong base of individuals that especially attend our events, and so you can kind of understand who is the most engaged, and then actually, have a personal interaction with them and bring them into the different
Did
betas
they
that we
play
have.
the content early? I'm sorry, I'm just asking
please.
questions now. I'm very intrigued because this is an area I don't think about.
You can grab lunch.
Do they play? Yeah. Do they play the content early and then you launch it for all the other players?
Yeah. That's typically what happens. Absolutely. And so the mechanism of actually finding those individuals, aside from our online community, is actually through our tournaments and our events. Because, what's really interesting, I know we haven't talked much about the Ingress anomalies, but because there's 2 teams, everyone spends a lot of time organizing prior to the event itself.
Let's tell people what Ingress is, like the actual game.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I actually really like Ingress, and I hope you guys do too, and download it today. So Ingress is kind of like the intersection between Risk and like Foursquare. What's interesting about the game is that there's 2 teams, the Enlightened and the Resistance, and they're fighting for the control of XM, exotic matter, in and around the world. And the way that you do that is actually by capturing portals for your team. And portals are actual, like, cultural and artistic places and or interesting things around the world. So maybe a statue is a portal, or a plaque, or a monument, or whatnot. And so these anomalies, which are Ingress's version of tournaments, you come together as an entire Enlightened team or Resistance team and battle to control the XM in that city. And so what's interesting is because people have to strategize so much leading up to the game, because you have to be able to build fields and acquire a certain amount of items and AP, you can actually see the individuals that are the most engaged and really continue the dialogue with them, because they're the ones that invest not just a few hours a day, they invest like 24 hours a day. I can't even tell you how many people prior to anomalies are out there fielding and capturing items, leading up to like the 9 o'clock time call for them the next day. And they'll stay out until 8 in the morning for sure, playing to make sure they have enough items. So we identify those individuals, we continue the dialogue with them because those are our team leads, and then we bring them into the tests.
Yeah. You say you started with 50 people and it's grown significantly. I think there's also a difference between having a community and having a community that kind of actively provides feedback and like feels like they're part of the game. I think Kickstarter organically makes them feel like they're involved, right? That's part of the whole premise. But maybe you could talk about how you grew that community and how you grew them to feel like they were part of what you're doing.
Yeah, so we started with these tournaments, these anomalies, and really what we noticed is that the Ingress agents, as we call them, they really wanted to be able to recruit more individuals and help people feel like they could come into the Ingress family. So through that, we did a bunch of surveys of the individuals that were the most engaged and asked them, what can we as a community and a marketing team provide for you to bring in more players? What do you want, basically? And from that, we actually evolved and created a series called First Saturdays, and where we actually structure events throughout the world for new agents to come and download the game, and they basically tutor each other. We provide them with art assets, we provide them with actual swag, and then they actually go out and do these events in and around the world. And what was awesome was that, it started off with maybe 50 events globally and maybe about less than 1,000 people, and it grew to like 300 events on a Saturday with thousands of people coming together in very obscure places. Like, we're not just talking about major cities. I mean, like tiny little towns in Chile and tiny towns in Thailand. And that's when we started to realize, if we allow our community to feel like they have a stake in the growth of the game, then we create a stronger sense of Ingress and of the games that we'll have, because we give them a part of that development.
Yeah, that's great. So Corey, Star Wars.
Yes, Drew.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of Star Wars properties. There's from
everywhere you go.
From games, right? There's other Star Wars games. There's obviously movies and toys and everything. Like, how at BioWare did you not only get people bought into what you were doing with Star Wars, but feel like they were not just part of the Star Wars community, but part of your Star Wars community?
Sure. I mean, it was helpful that we had great talents like James Olin and Ray Mazuka, Greg Zuschek, that came from the original Knights of the Old Republic. So we had that sort of legacy to build off of.
Yep.
So then we got to kind of build that universe out. But with progression games, it's always to incentivize grouping, to incentivize guild recruitment, guild play, to help those guys come in and get together and then just really feel like they have a bit of ownership over their world, and the decisions and the actions that they're taking are making actual impact to the story and the surroundings around them.
Yeah, that's great. And J. Todd, you guys raised a not small amount of money on Kickstarter. $2 million is significant, and you and Gordon have been doing this a long time, have a lot of respect and strong reputation in the community. But can you talk about, that didn't get you $2 million. So what did you do to get the community to rally around you on Kickstarter? And then specifically after that was done, continue the momentum?
Yeah, so our crowdfunding campaign actually started long before the Kickstarter.
Okay.
So we started, the summer beforehand, building our prototype and preparing for it. And so the Kickstarter was at the end of February.
Okay.
So February 22nd or something like that of last year. So leading into that, we are, Gordon and I both are known in the industry,
yeah.
But it's not like, we're not Richard Garriott, we don't have that kind of name that just random gamers know. They would know our games that we've worked on, but they wouldn't know us personally necessarily. So we sat down and talked about, okay, so we need to, in order to feel comfortable doing this Kickstarter, because you kind of get one shot, and if it doesn't take,
yeah.
not just kind of, if it doesn't take, you're done.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, so in order to get to that point where we feel comfortable, we really need to start amassing a community now. And all the games that we've done before were at other companies or companies that were bought by the company. So it's not like we had a big email mailing list of people that we were talking to, right?
Sure.
We knew that there were people out there that we could reach out to, and we believed fundamentally that our vision would be interesting to an audience, that it would find an audience if we could reach them. So we basically put together, we treated it almost like an MMO launch, or a product launch. As we thought of our Kickstarter as, okay, it's going to start on this date. In the 90 days leading up to that, we need to amass, we just made up a number, 20,000 emails of people that we think are likely that they'd be interested in. So we we turned that into a game. We called it the game of rampant speculation. So we started with a website that didn't even say the name of the game. It just said, we think MMOs are old and busted and we're going to build a new hotness. We need to find we have a new idea that we think is going to be really cool. And dear internet, I know some of you are going to like it and a lot of you are going to hate it because you hate everything.
Yeah.
But that's fine. And a lot of you are not going to believe us. You think we're going to do the rampant speculation game, and at the end we're going to go, and it's a WoW clone.
Yeah.
Because that's what they all,
Did you tie your names to it or no?
We did tie our names to
Okay.
it. That's the one thing. So we put up the website, we put up our names, and that got a little bit of attention. And then what we did is we kind of arranged the campaign. The game of rampant speculation was guess the game that we're making. Right? Nobody knew what we're making. We're like, something's in the mystery box. Nobody knows what it is. Every day you come back and we're going to give you another hint.
Okay.
It has scales. No, it has horns. No, it has claws. Right? We're trying to get them to guess what's in the mystery box.
Sure.
And so we basically took the armchair designer nature of the internet and combined that with the need to bicker with other people on the internet. And we took those two forces and meshed them together onto a forum where people could basically argue these guys are full of it. There's nothing in the mystery box. They're out to screw us. They're just tricking us with no, it's going to be the coolest thing ever. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have time travel. All right?
Yeah.
We're somewhere in the middle between
time
those
travel
two.
and nothing.
Yeah, but time travel
represents
being kind of the
top.
ultimate cool.
Yeah.
And nothing pretty uncool. So we set up this rampant speculation game, and we treated it like the first season of Lost, right? Okay, well we'll put out now. Here's an answer to a question that we know that they have, but at the same time, it's going to kick off these three questions because it doesn't make any sense to connect that with this thing over here.
Yeah.
So the reason this worked, though, by the way, is we actually did have a crazy idea in the box. What we're creating was closer to time travel than nothing. Right?
Nice.
So that really, really helped.
Yeah.
That gave us that made the whole thing interesting, and it was crazy enough that nobody guessed it.
Yeah.
And so,
did you take any of their ideas?
We didn't take any of their ideas, but we absolutely changed the order of the pieces of the puzzle that we dropped to keep them guessing. If somebody would get a little too close to a core idea, we'd go, well, this isn't going to make any sense to them. Throw that out there. And that would kind of send the whole community skittering off in a different direction. Yeah. So our goal was 20,000 email, and we also talked to the press. That's the other thing is because we had press contacts from previous things, we were able to call up and get some press attention. And that also because, we when a crowd gathers, that makes it press worthy. And because we had a crowd gathering and all this activity on the forum, that meant the press wasn't just me and Gordon. It's me and Gordon are up to something weird and crazy, and a lot of people are noticing. So that made it press worthy. And then so we set the goal of 20,000 emails. We ran that campaign basically from January 1st is when we actually took down the teaser site and said, whatever is in the box, it's called Crowfall. Nothing else about it, but here's the name. To the latter end of February, I can't remember exactly what the date was. I think, like I said, it was the 22nd. We actually amassed 50,000 email signups, which was awesome because we were like, okay, now we feel really, really comfortable. Thank goodness we actually got the 50,000 emails because our ability to convert those turned out to be roughly half of what we thought it would be. Turning those people, we kind of did it was a whiteboard calculation of, and if we get this many, maybe we'll get this many to actually sign up, and maybe they'll spend this much money, and et cetera, et cetera. So once you're on Kickstarter, the other thing that I think is really key to know about the way Kickstarter works is a lot of people think they're going to go to Kickstarter and Kickstarter will give them an audience. And that is not at all the way it works. So Kickstarter is in the business of aggregation of community. They know if you kickstart something, you're likely to come back later and kickstart something else, and you're likely to do it again. So just like Facebook and all these other social networks, they're building a network of people who like to back projects, right? So that's what their kind of business model is. So if you just go and put it up, they're not going to give you staff pick or any kind of visibility or anything like that because you're just one of any number of projects. But if you go day one and you bring your own community, and they see a lot of new signups of people that had never back before that you brought into their fold, suddenly you're very interesting to them, right? And so at that point, they'll start to see you get momentum, and they'll start to throw some more weight behind you, and then you start to get the lift. So at the end of the campaign, some 20-something% of the people that backed us were actually people that we didn't bring in. They came, as far as we can tell, it's a little hard to tell, but as far as we can tell, they were part of the Kickstarter community who found out about us through Kickstarter. But at the very beginning, day one, it was like 0%.
So it was all us. Do you think that 80% of your Kickstarter funding is from people that you collected ahead of time?
Oh, I would think so, yeah. Or not just that we collected, or the people that we collected, they collected, right? It's the networking effect.
You can take credit for that.
I can take credit for a lot, as it turns out. But no, that one I have to give credit to the users.
That's cool. And so I think that's a really good next segment for everybody is for games that are continuing on. You have episodes, you have a game that's going across the country, and then you're still raising money for...
Oh, yeah, we raise money every month.
Yeah, so I'd love to see how everybody... Pledge today. How everybody keeps people engaged over time, right? I think J. Todd's got his mystery box. Corey, what's your mystery box?
The episodes is certainly a part of that. I think one of the things we do that's unique and interesting is we have these things called cantina tours. So once a month, we'll go to a different city in the U.S., and then a couple of times we'll go out to Europe, and we'll just spend time with our fans. Anywhere between a few hundred to 1,000 or so fans come out and go to these things. And then we ran a pretty interesting experiment around what were the reach of the people that came to these, and as always, when you have a corporate overlord, they want to know what the ROI for any given thing that you're doing is. So we're like, well, let's see if we can try to figure this out. So we gave in-game items and then codes that would generate 5 other codes that you could give out to friends, right? And so with this, we found that the reach of the few hundred to 1,000 that came to these events blew up, to 50 times the amount of people that were actually at the event. And then in turn, those that came in to claim their in-game item, those that were former subscribers had a double-digit percentage of resubscribing to the game and playing for a few months. Those that were brand new to the game had a low single-digit percentage, but still, like people that were probably not going to check it out at all were now logging into your game, claiming an item, and staying and playing for a couple of months. We thought that was fantastic. So that was a great way. Plus, it's you can't put an ROI value on FaceTime with your players. For them, it's great because they get to ask questions directly, and for you, the developer, it's just an incredible battery recharge, right? Because if you're in a great mood and you're feeling like everything's, you guys are unstoppable, just go read the forums, and you'll quickly learn that none of that's true, right? And then you kind of get in that slump, and then just go out and meet these people and talk face to face, because maybe 1 in 1,000 will tell you to your face what they would write on the forums, negatively. But it's just an incredible battery recharge to go out and get face to face, shoulder to shoulder with these people that are so passionate about the thing that you're so passionate about as well. So
that's great.
That's been a big win for us.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel the same way with Ingress, and our anomalies and our tournaments and our new player events have totally been the way that we continue to keep people engaged, but also empower our community to bring more members into the game itself. The other thing that I find very just really unique about Ingress is that Niantic Labs has really given the players a lot of autonomy as far as helping to understand the backstory and the fiction. So there is a kind of like a news show about Ingress itself, which is on YouTube, and it involves a lot of sit reps that agents actually submit. So for them, it gives them a sense of fame and notoriety within the game itself, so that they can hopefully get featured on the Ingress report with Susanna Moyer. And then the other piece is, so there is like a really interesting way that Ingress has seasons of these tournaments and anomalies, and then at the beginning of the season, they actually release the art assets into the community itself. And I mean, as y'all know, like gamers, like we're creative people. And so they come back with a ton of really interesting art assets, and we feature those publicly so that everyone, again, feels like they have a stake at the table as well about, creating that sense of community for each of the seasons. And so I would say that, keeping the players that are the most engaged happy with the tournaments, with the online pieces, with the YouTube show, and then also building in different ways for our already established players to bring in new players through the things like First Saturdays and other kinds of online and in-person events is how we've continued to even bring more people in to the game itself.
And Corey mentioned the scary word of ROI.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that at Ingress?
Do you really have to talk about this? No, I'm just kidding. It was always an interesting discussion as someone that comes from the community management background and the understanding of marketing. So y'all were actually talking about how community tends to sit in product and or, in the development process. In my lifetime as a community manager, it's always sat in marketing, and it's always been this weird place of, let me talk to the engineers. I need to talk to the product today because I want to bring them the feedback that I'm getting from my players. We had some growing pains within Ingress as we did events, and then product wanted to know like what is actually happening, and people wanted direct ROIs, but as you mentioned, it's an invaluable ROI because you actually get to go and talk to the people that are recruiting hundreds of members that are spending like 48 hours doing these like crazy operations and self-organizing, and then providing you so much feedback so you can continue to make a better game and hopefully other games that will keep them engaged. So it was always an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it really came down to we need to reward our players, and this is the way it's going to happen. And we'll figure all the ROI and everything else out in another way.
Cool. And so now that you've raised the money on Kickstarter and you have all these fans, what do you do to keep them engaged?
Well, we have a very transparent development process. You mentioned NDAs earlier, which big companies, that's like a necessity. We're not a big company, so we don't have one.
Sure.
We just we put it out there and we hope that they like it. And actually that's worked out pretty well for us so far, even though it was a little crazy and bumpy at the beginning. I think the response is a higher level of trust with, okay, well they're not hiding stuff from us, because they're literally not hiding anything from us.
Yeah.
We also have a full-time community manager and a full-time videographer, so that we can do updates about what's going on with the development process. We put out updates at least 2 a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then maybe every other Wednesday. Some months it's every Wednesday. We do an update that's not really about the game design or the game. It's really about the company. What's going on with our company.
Sure.
So the interesting thing, I think, is that the community that we had during the rampant speculation game is not exactly the same community that we have now, who is watching the development process, and I suspect that will not be the same community that we have once we launch. Just numbers alone probably dictates that, but communities aren't there. It's a moving target, right? It's like a hive mind of voices, and some of them, other stuff comes up and they drop out, and new ones come in and they become very loud, and so the whole process of dealing with and managing that community is a non-trivial chunk of our time as a dev team. I would say that it's at least, in a given week, probably 20% of our effort as an organization is just keeping that community fed and engaged and interested.
Yeah. So. I'm curious. It seems like there's a lot of positive effects of engaging your community, using the community. Is there? What is the biggest negative effect?
20% of my time and effort is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, there are a lot of positives, but like you said also, right? It is, people think they think it'll just be funny, I'll be snarky on the forums. And what they don't realize is that artist that you just said, this just looks like crap.
Yeah.
That person spent 4 weeks working on that piece of art, right? And they may not even be happy with it. They would have loved to spend more time on it. But Gordon, the producer, walked over and said, wrap it up, you got to move on to the next thing. And so now you basically, by being snarky on the forums, you basically tanked that artist's whole day, So, I'm not going to change the internet by saying that. I'm just ranting. So, in fact, I'm going to go rant about this on the internet and make the other people feel bad. That's the way to solve this problem.
You counter rant with rant. That's the right way to do it. Olga, negative impacts of crowds, community?
There's really, not really. I'm sorry, did I just talk over you?
A little bit.
Sorry.
Olga? No, go for it.
No, you go first.
This is community
you're
in real life. No, I think that the toughest part is just like what you mentioned, right? Sometimes comments hurt. And it's just tough, man. We're all doing the best that we can, and I wish that I could have a camera 8 hours a day at my desk so everyone could see this is what's really happening, and this is what I'm talking about with the engineers, and here's how I'm advocating for what you want. But obviously no one has that, and then you have to be politically correct when you answer things that are a little bit controversial. But I think at the end of the day, if there's one thing that I wish everyone would understand is that, dude, we care so much about y'all, and I'm just talking specifically about Ingress, but I've also understood this with other gaming companies. We all care so much about your experience and the game that you're playing. Trust us, and we have your best interest at heart. And I think that that's the biggest challenge, is that sometimes people forget, because y'all also care very much, and so we're just at a misalignment of where we're on the spectrum of caring. Yeah.
Corey, you can talk now.
Actually, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to add to that. No, I was just going to say, as a producer, I have no feelings, so it makes it a lot easier for me to. But I used to be a designer, so I did have feelings at one point in time. But for me, it's I want to see emotion, so there isn't a negative impact. Show me love in the form, show me hate. Just don't be silent. That's a death nail, right? It's if your community just stops chiming in.
I have a few people that I'd be cool with them being silent. I'll be honest. There's a couple. Yeah.
But when your community stops chiming in and just stops feeding back, that's dangerous territory.
Cool. So I have one more question, and then we'll go to Q&A. So if anybody has questions, we have a mic back there, and we can have you lined up now. So the question is, how do you deal with the vocal minority versus the feedback of the whole group? How do you kind of decipher what people are actually angry about, or what John in North Dakota is angry about? You want to start?
For us, that's a great example of what question do you have, what hypothesis do you want to prove or disprove. You listen to what the vocal minority is talking about, and then you take a look at what's actually happening in the game. Like, unlike any other form of entertainment, books, movies, television, we know exactly what you're doing anytime you're in our game. We know everything you've done, right? So we can go back and see, what are they really upset about? Is this a real thing? And then we can look around some of the data and say, no, this is actually, they have a legitimate complaint, but what they're saying the fix is, or what they think the solve isn't really going to fix what they want. So what we're going to do is fix it this way, and that's going to address that problem and probably 3 others that they didn't even realize were problems yet. So for us, it's really digging in. That's a great example of how we can dig into the data. And sometimes you just don't do anything about it, right? The vocal minority is a minority, and that's sadly just the way it is for the majority of players that are enjoying that aspect of your game.
Sure.
Yeah, and I would add, especially for the game studios out there, you hire really good people. Empower the individuals within your community team to discern, using data, what decisions they have to make, and whether to be vocal and respond, or to also, sometimes the best answer is to just stay quiet and understand that this too shall pass, and tomorrow will be a new day, and so let's go talk to everyone that's
tomorrow
excited.
They'll be mad about something different.
Right, exactly.
So I guess my only other comment would be, if you've got a group of people who are making a game, they gotta be playing that game. I'm surprised how often you'll have a development team and you'll find out that only 25% of the people on the game actually play that game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if you go find another game to work on that you want to play, but if you're in and you're actually playing, so me going to an engineer and saying hey, we need to fix this, 3 or 4 times because they really don't know that it's a problem or whatever, totally different world from the engineer is playing the game, hits that bug 3 times and says this has to be fixed and fix it. It's a whole different world. So I would say if there's the kind of one piece of advice, it's the people on the team, they have to be playing the game.
Great. Well,
Here,
thanks,
that's
Yeah,
spot on.
agreed.
All right.
So I do have a question, but I'm going to start with an assertion, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. The assertion is, panel aside, most of the people making games are not the ones you want out interfacing personally with the public. But y'all are making a very good case for player engagement, pulling back the curtain, telling people how the sausage is made. But some people probably could say, well, they're all making multiplayer games, so maybe their community is going to be different than a single-player game. But I'm just thinking, this is probably going to be different for y'all because this is not your problem. But I think a lot of people who make games, their core competency is not about talking to people and finding out what they want. So if you were making a game and you find that no one's really that good at interfacing with the public, then what do you do?
Hire that person.
Yeah.
Find that person. Back to our Cantina tours, we took engineers, if that's what you were hinting about. We let
You have engineers
go out
that are
and
good
talk
for
to
talking with people?
Well, I didn't say they're good at it. I said we took them.
Okay.
They got to do it.
I actually, so to me, it's more about whether or not the team member wants to be in front of the camera or wants to be in front of the audience. If they do, then there's nothing wrong with, if they're authentic, then some portion of your audience will buy that, right?
Yeah.
Is that's what I think a lot, especially in the phase we're in right now, a lot of the audience, what they want is they're buying into not just a game vision, right? They could go to, to Steam and buy another game. They're buying into the process and they're buying into your team, and they want to see you win. Sometimes they beat you up in that process, but that ultimately they actually want to see the team and they want to see the game come out and they want to see you guys win. So I think that again, if somebody's just like, I don't want to be on camera, then of course we don't do that. But if they are interested, what I try to do is I try and help them out in terms of all right, let's not talk about that. That's why we have a video person, so we can do some editing. But here's the touch points that we should talk about. I've gone to individuals that are like, yeah, but nobody really wants to hear about that. I've been like, actually, I think they might. It's like we had a video we did recently where one of our senior engineers Mr. Mike McShaffery, went through and showed off how we provision servers on AWS, right? That doesn't appeal to the wide market as a whole, but there's a subset of our audience that's like, ooh, that's really interesting. Tell me more. You were able to prop a server in Singapore 20 minutes after Todd asked you to do that? How the hell did you do that? And I'm like, yeah, Mike, how the hell did you do that? So we filmed it. So I actually think that companies are too hesitant. Now, granted, I have a small audience relative. I mean, nothing like Star Wars, right? So Star Wars, it's a whole different ball game because you don't want George Lucas. Well, I guess he won't call you anymore.
No, it's Bob Iger now.
Yeah, but you don't want the wrong person calling you on the phone. And in our case, we're independent, we're small, we have a small enough audience that we can build a direct connection. So we do. So
I would just like to say, so in Ingress in particular, we actually had 2 of our players, like some of our most valuable players and highest level players, become mini ambassadors. And we had one person in particular in the US who actually toured around with us. We had one person in EMEA who toured around on behalf of Ingress, and then eventually had someone in APAC. And so, kind of flip it around. Can you empower your players, the most adamant ones, to speak on your behalf if you're, the individuals on your team, and then you coach them. You say, hey, like, this we can talk about, this is like not so cool.
That's a really interesting point. Because when you said that, I realized that our current community manager used to run a fan podcast for SWTOR. So we met him at shows, he interviewed a lot of us, we ended up hiring him, and now he runs our entire community department.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. You guys have talked a lot about how passionate gamers are and how like radically positive or negative their feedback can be. How much of that feedback is like inbound, organic feedback that they just give you, and then how much of it is like outbound, like stuff that you ask for?
That's a good question.
Corey?
50-50. No, just like if you were doing very focused testing, like literally focused tests, then we get exactly what we're asking for, right? When we kind of open it up to open-ended survey monkey things or however else we want people to send us their feedback, like in pre-launch early beta, a lot of the stuff that we worked closely with Gordon to set up. For those who don't know, Gordon also was a founder of BioWare Austin and got Star Wars: The Old Republic on the tracks to be made in the first place. But a lot of that stuff that was set up around our closed stuff was they would just send us Word documents, right? And some of that was way off track and way out of bounds and redesigning things and writing scripts, and other parts were very particular to what we usually put a goal out, right? It's like, this test is focusing on X, Y, and Z. Please keep your feedback limited to X, Y, and Z. And controlling somebody that's doing you a favor basically it's fine if they want to chime in more than that, but most of your focus is on what you're looking to find out about.
I think for Ingress, we actually use Google Plus communities really well, and we have private communities where we engage our agents and players often. So I don't know that I have a percentage per se, but it's super fluid because our community managers, whether they're the online piece or like myself who was actually in person, we're talking to the agents every day. I mean, I was on pings and hangouts and different mechanisms to talk to our agents, asking them questions about how they want this or that daily.
And I've talked to you about this before. They provided a lot of voluntary feedback, but you set up the tools for them to provide that feedback.
Right, exactly. And so for Ingress and even Field Trip, so I don't know if y'all are familiar with Field Trip. It's another game that Niantic has. Everything was about setting up the platform so that the agents can come in and talk whenever they feel like it. It's like going to someone's house and just chilling on the couch. You don't have to leave. And obviously we want you to stay and watch TV with us all day. Let's binge watch.
Sounds a little clingy.
But we like it. We like it that way. We want people to feel like this is your family. Like really, like on the backside, whenever we talked about Ingress, like at Niantic, it's about the family of Ingress, So, yeah.
Cool. Next question.
So, I'm going to talk mostly about Star Wars since of the people that are up here, that's what I have the most experience with. I played Star Wars for the last couple of months, all the way through the night 3.0 went live, and I was part of the 3.0 closed beta. The guild that I
You're
was
still under NDA, by the way. No, I'm just kidding.
So part of the feedback that we gave, or that I gave, was related to how you changed the level up system. And with regards to bugs in that, one of the guilds that I played with failed to report a bug, even though they knew about it and exploited it, particularly with regards to the Dread Fortress raid and how to kill Nephra. It is my understanding with my correspondence with them that they were banned forever after the end of that, and that was a lot of the top 0.01% of your player base. How do you keep the people that are way far and above the average player interested in your game after they've, gotten to that point?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. It's a hard question to answer, right? Because keeping your hardcore players interested, you can't just keep cranking up health points on bosses, right? That doesn't work.
Right.
Even adding new mechanics, new bosses doesn't necessarily solve that problem. We do have a pretty zero tolerance policy around exploits, so that doesn't surprise me if that happened. But that's something that we're trying to solve all the time, like balancing between. So with the Star Wars movie coming out and a brand new expansion launching and it being very story driven and allowing players to come in at level 60 and jump right into the brand new content, how do we balance that with the people that have been around since launch and they want to have bigger, badder challenges all the time, right? So it's a resource juggling game, and then it's just really trying to scratch that itch as often as we can and as often as we need to keep those players engaged. But it's a really hard thing to solve for.
Great. So we have time for one more question. Thank you.
You talked about how you engage the gamers who are interested. Do you ever do any form of engagement of the people who aren't playing to discover why they don't play and what it would take to get them on board?
Do you play? Why don't you play? Sorry, I don't want to dominate. But for us, you have to opt in for us to send you emails and things. So if you're not a player, it's hard for us to reach out and touch you. There are, when we go to shows all around the world and people come up and like, what's this? I've never heard of this game. You're like, to me, it's mind blowing. It's like, I feel like this has been such a big part of my life for so many years, and we've spent so much money. It's like, how have you never ever heard of this game? But it's that's a harder thing to answer. But it's around focus groups. It's around research. It will hire third-party research firms to go out and talk to Star Wars fans or MMO players or RPG fans or BioWare fans that don't currently have an account and kind of find out what would engage them in our game.
Yeah, we do the similar thing at Ingress. I think the other thing is we realized if we empower the users that are currently playing our game and provide them with a mechanism to actually go out and recruit people that maybe have thought about Ingress or think it's kind of interesting that their coworkers go out at lunch for an hour to go play this game called Ingress, then hopefully we can bring them in to become actual agents that will, interact with the game daily. And we built the mechanism of First Saturdays, which actually happened First Saturdays. It started about a year ago, where they come and they recruit the people that they think would be super fun to play with. And that's the mechanism that we've really kind of really compromised with our community, because it came out of a request from the community themselves, because they wanted to recruit more agents and we weren't doing it quickly enough. So we said, well, what do y'all want? Let's do it. And that's how it came about.
Jitat, any final thoughts?
Yeah, my answer is a little different, which is if somebody chooses not to play, I thank them for checking out the game, and I don't care. At the end of the day, we're making a game specifically for a particular type of player, and if 8 or 9 out of 10 people that look at the game go, I'm not that kind of player, great. Thank you for checking us out, and thank you for filtering yourself out of our community as opposed to coming on the boards and telling us to change our vision, which we're not going to change. So, I don't. Okay, we're a little weird though, right? We don't spend any dollars in marketing. We don't have a marketing budget, so I don't have the resources to spend on our current players. I certainly don't have the resources to spend on the people that tell me they don't like the game.
Sure.
So, we listen. And if there's something that's like an incorrect assumption, right? Like on Reddit, somebody's like, well, I'm not going to play that game because of blah, blah, blah. And we're like, we actually have that. We'll correct it if we see it. But if they say, I'm not going to play it because of X, Y, Z, and XYZ code totally valid, we are not doing that, then we just say, okay, that's cool. Thanks for checking out the game.
Awesome.
Maybe some other game.
Well, thank you, everybody, for showing up. We are past time, but I appreciate it, and thanks to all our panelists.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.